A Lucy-lovin Nation, the origin of I Love Lucy. The lovable but brash redhead didn't seem to understand what she was asking for simply wasn't possible. She would need to decide, either use a live audience or a multi-camera shoot. Nobody had ever combined the two. After all, she and her husband, Desi Arnaz, had decided to shoot their television show like a play from the beginning to the end, complete with an audience. Everyone in the television business knew that using more than one camera required different lighting and lens distances for each shooting. They would need to repeat each shot several times, as television programs had always done during a multi-camera production. The audience couldn't be expected to maintain enthusiastic laughter with each successive take. It was time for veteran cinematographer Carl Freund to set both Lucy and Desi straight. Employing his firmest professional voice, he furrowed his brow, set his jaw, and emphatically repeated what he had previously told them. It can't be done. Lucy and Desi, however, had a powerful weapon in their arsenal, their combined charm. Lucy fluttered her lashes over pleading blue eyes, while Desi flashed his disarming smile. Then, sensing a slight crack in Freund's defense, Desi fired the big gun, flattery. "Well, I know that nobody has done it up to now," he crooned, "but I figured if there was anyone in the world who could do it, it would be Carl Freund." Knowing he was done for, Freund shook his head and set to work on the task that couldn't be done. Desi's evaluation of Freund's abilities had been accurate. Issue by issue, he tackled and eventually solved each problem. Freund used various shades of gray paint to paint out inappropriate shadows that might appear where the variations in lighting. He and newly hired director Mark Daniels strategically positioned 4 cameras with differing lenses. They hoped the audiences wouldn't mind occasionally peering over and around the equipment to see the show. Unfortunately, the necessary modifications to the studio, especially enlarging the building to comply with fire regulations for the expanded seating, would considerably increase the show's cost. CBS balked at the extra expense. Always the wheelers and dealers, Desi and Lucy offered to take large pay cuts to make up the difference, with one small stipulation. They wanted 80% ownership of the filmed episodes. CBS readily agreed. After all, they figured once the shows were aired, the film they had shot them on would be worthless. History, of course, has shown them to be just a tad short-sighted. That short-sightedness would eventually turn Lucy and Desi into television's first millionaire television stars. When nostalgia for the show brought about syndicated reruns, the worthless film transformed into solid gold. That kind of wealth was new to both of them. In fact, Desi had begun his working life cleaning bird cages for a man who sold canaries to pet shops. His family had fled Cuba in 1933 with little more than the clothes on their backs when Batista overthrew the Cuban government. Like the rest of his family, he took whatever job was available. Although Lucy began a little higher on the job ladder than a birdcage cleaner, the Jamestown, New York actress-to-be worked more than her share of extra and bit parts before Lady Luck finally appeared. Lucy acted in so many second-rate B-movies during the 1930s, she gained the nickname the Queen of the Bees. The pairing of this unlikely couple transpired in 1940, during a filming of the Rodgers and Hart musical Too Many Girls. Desi had been performing in the Broadway stage version when RKO Pictures bought the film rights. To cast the part of Arnez's love interest in the upcoming movie, RKO turned to their Queen of the Bees. As filming began, their on-screen love affair quickly spread to real life. Following a whirlwind 4-month courtship, Desi and Lucy were no longer just co-stars. They were a real-life married couple. While Desi toured the country with his rumba band, Lucy continued her acting career, eventually settling into a successful stint on CBS radio with a popular radio show, My Favorite Husband. In 1950, CBS decided to move the comedy to television and asked Lucy to make the move. She was enthusiastic about the idea, but told them she would only go if her husband was hired as her co-star. The network executive said that pairing a beautiful New York redhead with a Cuban band leader wouldn't seem a realistic couple, despite the fact they were married in real life. In order to prove that people would accept the concept, they worked a vaudeville-type act into his tour dates. Partway through the band's musical numbers, Lucy would appear, wandering around on stage carrying a cello and sporting a bewildered look. She was scheduled to audition, she told the flustered Desi Arnaz. Following this, the couple would break into their comedy skits, leaving the audience in stitches, and the critics eventually convinced television audiences would accept their marital roles. With CBS on board, they began searching for actors, writers, cameramen, and all the rest. But another concern soon arose. CBS liked the name The Lucille Ball Show for the title. Lucy, however, had decided Desi's name should not only be in the title, but should come before hers. The network, however, simply wouldn't buy the Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball Show for the name. Once again, it seemed their program planning had hit a dead end. Finally, someone devised a creative way to work Desi into the title first. He would obviously be the I if the show was called I Love Lucy. Once this had been solved, the talent search continued. Lucy actually wanted her fellow actor on My Favorite Husband, Gale Gordon, to play the role of the crabby neighbor and landlord Fred Mertz. Gordon, though, was tied up with the Our Miss Brooks radio program. William Frawley, who had met Lucy previously, telephoned her when he learned about the upcoming show and asked if there might be a part for him. Similarly, Vivian Vance was not the network's first choice for Fred's wife Ethel. Lucy had worked with Bea Benaderet in radio and wanted her to play the part. Like Gordon, she was busy with another role playing Blanche Morton on television's Burns and Allen show. Looking back, though, it's hard to conceive of better selections than Frawley and Vance for the roles of the Mertzes. For 6 rollicking years, most of the nation peered through small magic windows to observe the black and white world where Lucy, Desi, Fred, and Ethel mined their comedic gold. That immortal gold mine still reflects classic scenes that seem to shine with an increasing luster as the years roll by. Among those immortal images is the one of Lucy and Ethel stuffing chocolates into their pockets and eventually their mouths as an out-of-control conveyor belt speeds the candy by them. The shimmering views also include images of their wild grape stomping, as well as their tango dancing calamity after they had hidden raw eggs in their blouses. They also display Desi and Fred's kitchen disaster as they dodge falling chickens, the overzealous pressure cooker had blasted to the ceiling, while a boiling pot prepares to spew a floor full of slippery rice. The adulation of their millions of fans is corroborated by the show's consistently high ratings. During their run from October 1951 to May of 1957, they often garnered as much as 60 to 70% of the viewing audience. In addition, along with the Andy Griffith Show and Seinfeld, it was one of only 3 shows to go out in the #1 position. But those millions of fans don't need any statistics to validate their loyalty. Their justification is easy. They simply loved Lucy.